Why is it that two people, born in the same city, given the same opportunities, can end up with two entirely different lives, one living in abundance, the other trapped in scarcity? The answer lies not in luck, nor in chance, but in the quiet power of their mindset. And if you've been thinking the way poor people think, no amount of effort will ever bring you lasting wealth. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to talk with you about something far more powerful than money itself. Your thoughts about money. You see, it is not the lack of resources that keeps a man or woman poor. It is the presence of poor thinking. The world does not withhold its riches, we withhold them from ourselves by the way we think. The poor mindset says, I can't afford it. The wealthy mindset asks, how can I afford it? One closes the door, the other searches for the key. The poor mindset sees risk in every opportunity. The wealthy mindset sees opportunity in every risk. It is this subtle shift of thinking that makes the difference between mediocrity and greatness. Let us remember this timeless truth. We become what we think about. Those 7 words hold the secret of both poverty and wealth. Think like a pauper, and pauper you remain. Think like a builder, a creator, and a servant of value, and wealth begins to flow to you. Now, how do we rid ourselves of the poor mindset? Let me give you a few practical steps first. Guard your thoughts. Do not dwell on limitation. Instead, train your mind to look for possibilities, even in the face of difficulty. Second, feed your mind as carefully as you would feed your body. Read books that challenge you, listen to voices that lift you, and surround yourself with people who expect more of you than you expect of yourself. Third, take responsibility. A poor mindset waits for rescue. A wealthy mindset knows that no one is coming. Your future is not in the lottery ticket nor in the handouts of others, it is in your daily decisions. Fourth, practice gratitude. Poverty complains about what is missing, prosperity celebrates what is present, and from that gratitude flows the energy to create more. And finally, act. Wealth is never built on idle wishes, it is built on steady, consistent, purposeful action. Each day is an opportunity to plant seeds for tomorrow's harvest. So remember this, you cannot think poorly and live richly. Poverty begins in the mind, and so does prosperity. Change your thinking, and you will change your life. And I'll leave you with this thought, wealth is not something we chase. It is something we attract by the person we become. Now here's your call to action. Tonight, sit down with a pen and paper. Write out the beliefs you've been carrying about money, about success, and about yourself. Then challenge them. Replace every poor thought with a rich one, every doubt with a possibility, and every excuse with a plan. Do this, and you will have already begun the journey from poverty to prosperity. Because the truth is simple, you can't get rich thinking like you're poor. Wealth begins in the mind long before it shows in the bank, for every outward result is nothing more than a reflection of the inner world we carry within us. The thoughts we choose, the beliefs we hold, and the attitudes we nurture create the invisible blueprint for everything that eventually manifests in our lives. A person who constantly entertains ideas of lack, limitation, and impossibility will never build the habits or take the actions necessary to create abundance. On the other hand, the individual who fills their mind with possibility, growth, and responsibility will naturally move toward choices that lead to prosperity. The human mind is the most fertile soil in existence, and it will grow whatever seeds are planted into it. Plant fear, and you will harvest hesitation. Plant excuses, and you will reap stagnation. But plant vision, persistence, and determination, and you will find that opportunities begin to align themselves with your path. The poor mindset waits for circumstances to change, believing that external luck or fortune must arrive before progress can be made. The wealthy mindset understands that wealth is not something we stumble upon, but something we build deliberately, first through mental clarity and then through daily action. It is the discipline of seeing beyond immediate obstacles and imagining a bigger future that causes someone to rise above average. Before money ever enters a person's pocket, the idea of money, of responsibility, of wise use and creation of value, must first take root in the mind. Those who believe they are undeserving of wealth, or who carry guilt about success, unconsciously sabotage themselves, no matter how hard they work. Those who align their thinking with abundance and service attract wealth almost inevitably, because their inner belief guides them to behave in ways that generate it. Consider how many fortunes were started with nothing more than an idea. The great inventors, entrepreneurs, and leaders of history did not begin with riches in their bank accounts, they began with riches in their imagination. They saw what others could not see and believed what others doubted. The mind gave birth to the vision, and the vision guided the action, until eventually the external world caught up with the inner conviction. If you study people who sustain wealth, you will find that their inner dialogue is fundamentally different. They ask questions like, how can I grow? How can I serve? How can I create more value? While the poor mindset asks, why isn't someone helping me? Why is life so unfair? This contrast reveals that wealth is never an accident, but always a product of internal alignment. Wealth begins in the mind because the mind is where habits are born. Habits of saving, investing, creating, and serving do not develop from desperation but from vision. And vision itself is a mental creation formed by the consistent practice of thinking abundantly, refusing to dwell on limitation and choosing to believe that growth is possible no matter the starting point. When the mind is trained to expect expansion, the bank account eventually follows, because the outer world cannot resist the force of an inner world determined to prosper. Poverty is not just a lack of money, it's a way of thinking, a state of mind that changes people long before circumstances do. A person can have very little in material wealth yet carry themselves with a spirit of growth, responsibility, and faith in possibility, and that person will eventually rise out of limitation. At the same time, someone may have access to resources but think in ways of fear, scarcity, and dependence, and sooner or later those resources will vanish. Poverty is not primarily external, it is internal. It is the habit of telling oneself that things cannot change, that opportunities are only for others, that life is unfair, and that personal effort is futile. This pattern of thought becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, keeping the individual stuck in cycles of stagnation. The poor mindset focuses on lack. It sees only what is missing, what cannot be done, what is too difficult or too far away. It compares, complains, and criticizes, never realizing that this constant attention to limitation builds an invisible prison. When the mind rehearses lack every day, it cannot see opportunities even when they are placed directly in front of it. On the other hand, a wealthy mindset may face real challenges, but approaches them with a different spirit. Instead of dwelling on what is missing, it asks how to build with what is available. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, it searches for solutions. Instead of wasting energy in resentment, it directs energy toward growth. The difference between poverty and prosperity is not measured by the numbers on a bank statement, but by the quality of daily thoughts and decisions. A person who thinks richly begins to act differently. They are careful about the influences they consume, the people they surround themselves with, and the habits they allow to grow. They think in terms of value, how to create it, how to deliver it, and how to expand it. They understand that wealth flows to those who solve problems, not to those who avoid responsibility. Poverty thinking resists responsibility, seeking comfort in excuses and blame. It says, "This is all life has for me." Prosperity thinking embraces responsibility, knowing that life responds to effort, imagination, and persistence. History is filled with examples of individuals who rose from humble beginnings because they refused to think poorly. They did not deny their circumstances, but they denied their circumstances the power to define them. Their minds became their greatest resource, and once the mind was transformed, opportunities followed. A poor thinker in a rich environment will eventually find themselves back in lack, while a rich thinker in a poor environment will carve a path to abundance. This truth reveals that circumstances matter far less than mindset. Poverty is not just the absence of money, but the presence of small, fearful, and negative thoughts that slowly erode ambition and blind people to what is possible. To break free, one must change the way they think about themselves, about money, and about the future. With a new way of thinking, even the smallest step forward begins to compound into growth, and the invisible chains of poverty loosen until they disappear entirely. The poor mindset waits, the rich mindset creates, and in that single contrast lies the difference between lives of stagnation and lives of progress. Waiting is the language of hesitation, of hoping that conditions will change, that luck will intervene, or that someone else will provide the breakthrough. It is rooted in fear, in doubt, and in a lack of belief that one's own effort can alter the future. Creation, on the other hand, is the language of possibility. It is the decision to act even when conditions are not perfect, to build with what is available rather than wishing for what is not, and to move forward when others stand still. The poor mindset convinces itself that the right time has not yet arrived, that more preparation or more comfort is needed before anything can begin. The rich mindset knows that no perfect time will ever come, and so it starts with what it has, trusting that progress itself will open new doors. When someone waits, life passes them by, opportunities arise but go unnoticed, or they are observed and then dismissed because the person does not feel ready. They live as spectators, watching others move ahead while they stay behind. This waiting mindset is comfortable because it requires no risk, no vulnerability, no exposure to failure. But comfort is costly and the price is growth. Creation, however, demands courage. It asks for imagination, initiative, and discipline. It requires a person to step beyond fear and take responsibility for shaping their own destiny. The rich mindset creates not because the conditions are always favorable, but because it believes that creation itself is the force that changes conditions. A poor thinker may say, "I will start when I have more money, more time, or more knowledge." The wealthy thinker says, "I will start now and I will find money, time, and knowledge along the way." The poor mindset expects the path to be made clear before taking the first step. The rich mindset knows that the path becomes visible only when one begins to walk. This distinction creates an entirely different life trajectory. One person remains stuck, waiting endlessly for permission that will never arrive, while the other creates momentum that builds opportunities, connections, and resources. Creation is not about immediate perfection. It is about iteration, about trying, failing, learning, and trying again. Each act of creation strengthens resourcefulness, builds resilience, and deepens understanding. Waiting produces only frustration, excuses, and regret. Creation produces growth, clarity, and eventually abundance. The rich mindset is not careless, it does not leap blindly. But it does act decisively, understanding that the cost of inaction is far greater than the risk of imperfection. The poor mindset waits for inspiration, while the rich mindset creates inspiration by acting. The poor mindset waits for opportunity, while the rich mindset creates opportunity through service and innovation. The poor mindset waits for confidence, while the rich mindset creates confidence by stepping into action despite fear. And in every case, the act of creation transforms both the person and their environment, making possible what waiting could never deliver. Excuses are the bricks with which poverty builds its walls, and every time a person chooses an excuse over responsibility, another layer of limitation is added to their life. Excuses may feel harmless in the moment, a way to justify delay, failure, or lack of effort, but over time they construct a prison that keeps people trapped in mediocrity. Poverty is not simply about the absence of money, it is about the presence of patterns that sabotage progress. Excuses are one of those patterns, subtle yet powerful, because they give the illusion of reason while quietly eroding ambition. They sound convincing to the one who makes them, but to the outside world they reveal nothing more than avoidance. When a person says, "I can't because I don't have the time," what they really mean is that they are unwilling to prioritize. When they say, "I can't because I don't have the money," what they often mean is that they have not yet learned how to create, manage, or multiply it. Excuses shift the burden away from personal control and onto circumstances, creating the false belief that nothing can be done. Over time, this mindset solidifies, and the individual stops even trying to look for solutions. The walls grow taller and stronger, until what once was a choice becomes a habit, and what was a habit becomes an identity. The person becomes defined by the walls they built, without realizing they were the builder all along. The wealthy mindset, however, refuses to accept excuses as valid. It sees every problem as an opportunity to grow stronger. Instead of saying, "I can't," it asks, "How can I?" This shift in language dismantles the walls of poverty brick by brick. Where the poor mindset justifies inaction, the rich mindset takes ownership. Ownership is the opposite of excuse-making, because it acknowledges that while circumstances may be difficult, response is always within one's control. This is why two people can face the same setback, and one will find a way to rise while the other remains stuck. The difference lies not in resources, but in whether excuses are embraced or rejected. Excuses are easy to make because they protect the ego from discomfort. They prevent failure by preventing action, but in doing so, they also prevent growth. The wealthy mindset accepts failure as a teacher and embraces discomfort as the soil in which strength grows. Instead of building walls with excuses, it builds bridges with effort, resilience, and persistence. Every excuse avoided becomes a step closer to freedom, while every excuse embraced becomes another brick of confinement. The truth is, the walls built from excuses are never forced upon anyone. They are chosen one justification at a time until life feels too small to dream. To break free, one must stop stacking those bricks and start dismantling them by replacing excuses with responsibility. In doing so, the mind expands, the walls collapse, and the path to abundance becomes clear. Gratitude is the foundation of abundance because it shifts the mind from a focus on lack to a recognition of what is already present. A person who constantly fixates on what they do not have blinds themselves to the opportunities that surround them. They see only limitation, and as a result, they behave in ways that reinforce limitation. Gratitude, however, opens the eyes to possibility. When someone chooses to acknowledge even the smallest blessings, a roof overhead, food on the table, the ability to learn, the chance to try again, they begin to nurture a state of mind that attracts more of what they value. Abundance is not simply measured in wealth but in the fullness of life, and gratitude is the doorway to experiencing that fullness. The poor mindset believes that happiness will come only when more is gained, when conditions are perfect, or when dreams are fully realized. This mindset keeps the individual chasing endlessly, never satisfied, and never truly alive in the present moment. Gratitude interrupts that cycle by reminding us that what we have now is already meaningful and valuable. It transforms ordinary moments into gifts, and in doing so, it changes the quality of our thoughts. A person who is grateful makes better decisions because they are not operating out of desperation or envy. They can see opportunities clearly without being clouded by bitterness or frustration. Gratitude becomes the steady ground on which abundance can be built, because it allows the mind to operate from a place of strength rather than scarcity. Gratitude also cultivates resilience. Life inevitably presents challenges, but those who practice gratitude find a way to grow even in hardship. They see lessons in lost wisdom in mistakes and opportunities hidden within setbacks. Instead of collapsing under pressure, they ask what can be learned, what can be salvaged, and how they can become stronger. This ability to reframe difficulty into growth is a hallmark of abundant living, and it springs directly from gratitude. A grateful person does not deny difficulty. They simply refuse to let difficulty blind them to the good that still exists. Furthermore, gratitude changes the way we interact with others. A person who is grateful for relationships, opportunities, and support naturally treats others with more kindness and respect. They become someone others want to work with, invest in, and support. This network of goodwill often translates into new opportunities, creating a cycle where gratitude leads to abundance and abundance fuels more gratitude. The poor mindset, on the other hand, often leads to resentment, entitlement, or neglect, all of which repel opportunity and weaken relationships. Abundance is not created in a vacuum. It is built on the thoughts, emotions, and actions we cultivate daily. Gratitude is the seed from which all other virtues grow: discipline, patience, generosity, and vision. Without gratitude, even wealth feels empty. With gratitude, even modest beginnings feel rich, and those beginnings inevitably expand because gratitude sharpens awareness, strengthens resilience, and attracts opportunity until abundance is no longer a distant dream but a lived reality. Discipline, not desire, makes prosperity possible because desire alone is fleeting, while discipline transforms that desire into consistent action. Many people want success, wealth, and freedom, but wanting does not create results. Desire is the spark, but without discipline it dies quickly, leaving nothing but frustration and unmet dreams. Discipline is the structure that turns vision into reality, the repeated act of showing up when it is inconvenient, pushing forward when it feels tiring, and committing when enthusiasm fades. Prosperity is never the result of wishing. It is the outcome of habits built day by day through deliberate effort. A person may dream of financial freedom, but if they spend recklessly, avoid saving, and neglect learning, their desire cannot protect them from poverty. Another individual with the same dream may live with discipline, budgeting carefully, investing consistently, developing new skills, and choosing growth over comfort, and over time, prosperity becomes inevitable. The difference is not that one wanted success more than the other, but that one was willing to pay the price of discipline while the other was not. Desire gives energy in the beginning, but discipline sustains the energy when initial excitement fades away. Discipline is not punishment, it is the highest form of self-respect. It is choosing long-term gain over short-term gratification. It is waking early to learn when it would be easier to sleep, saving money when it would be easier to spend, focusing on progress when it would be easier to complain. These choices may seem small in isolation, but compounded over weeks, months, and years, they build prosperity in a way that desire alone never could. The poor mindset seeks comfort in the present moment and justifies it with desire, saying, "I want more, but it's too hard now." The wealthy mindset accepts the discomfort of discipline, knowing that today's sacrifice becomes tomorrow's freedom. The truth is that discipline is what separates potential from achievement. Many people possess talent, intelligence, and ambition, but without discipline these qualities remain unrealized. It is not the person with the loudest dream who prospers, but the one who quietly, consistently, and persistently does the work. Discipline does not demand perfection but persistence. It allows room for mistakes but never excuses quitting. Through discipline, failure becomes feedback, not defeat, and each setback becomes part of the process rather than the end of it. Prosperity is a reflection of choices repeated over time. Those choices require strength, and strength comes from discipline. Desire may start the journey, but it cannot carry it. The discipline to save when others spend, to learn when others waste time, to act when others hesitate, and to persist when others quit is what builds lasting wealth and success. Discipline is not glamorous and it is not always easy, but it is the silent force that turns ordinary lives into extraordinary examples of what is possible when commitment outweighs comfort and persistence outweighs passion. Success leaves clues. Poverty ignores them, and this simple truth explains why so many people remain stuck while others rise. Every achievement, every fortune, every breakthrough in history has been the result of patterns, principles, and behaviors that can be studied, understood, and applied. Success is not a mystery, it is a process. The people who thrive are those who pay attention to the lessons left behind by those who came before them, while those who remain in poverty are often those who overlook or dismiss these lessons. Clues are everywhere. Books, speeches, mentors, failures turned into wisdom. But only the attentive mind can gather them, study them, and put them into practice. The wealthy mindset studies success like a student studies a subject. It observes how people manage money, how they solve problems, how they approach relationships, and how they discipline themselves. Instead of assuming wealth is luck, it recognizes that wealth is the byproduct of choices, habits, and attitudes. Poverty, however, often ignores these lessons because they seem too simple, too demanding, or too uncomfortable. It is easier to say, "They were lucky," than to say, "They worked harder, thought differently, and sacrificed more than I have so far." Excuses drown out the clues, and so the cycle of poverty continues. Success leaves clues in the form of discipline. Those who rise wake up earlier, focus longer, and persist through setbacks. Poverty ignores this and clings to the belief that success must be easier than it looks, that perhaps there is some shortcut or secret formula. Success leaves clues in the form of mindset. Those who achieve think in terms of responsibility, growth, and service. Poverty ignores this by thinking in terms of blame, entitlement, and excuses. Success leaves clues in the form of persistence. Every successful person can tell stories of rejection, failure, and disappointment, but they continued moving forward. Poverty ignores this, interpreting failure as a final verdict rather than part of the process. Anyone willing to observe can find these clues. They are written in biographies, taught in seminars, demonstrated in everyday habits, and modeled by mentors and leaders. The question is never whether the clues exist, but whether one is willing to pay attention to them. The poor mindset closes its eyes to these lessons, convincing itself that success is unattainable or irrelevant. The rich mindset takes even the smallest clue and applies it with consistency, knowing that one small adjustment in thought or action can lead to transformation over time. Success leaves clues because principles never change. Hard work, vision, persistence, gratitude, and discipline have worked for centuries and will work for centuries to come. Poverty ignores them because they require humility and effort, two things the poor mindset resists. Yet the moment someone decides to notice, to listen, to learn, and to apply, those same clues begin to unlock doors that once seemed permanently closed, proving that the path to success has always been visible to those who choose to see it. Your thoughts are seeds, your actions are the harvest, and this timeless truth reminds us that everything we experience in life begins first in the mind. Just as a farmer knows that whatever seed he plants will determine the crop he eventually gathers, so too must we recognize that our dominant thoughts shape the direction of our actions and ultimately the results we enjoy or endure. If you sow seeds of doubt, fear, and limitation, you will naturally act hesitantly, avoiding risks, and you will reap a harvest of mediocrity. But if you plant seeds of faith, vision, and determination, your actions will align with growth, and the harvest will be one of abundance and progress. Thoughts are not idle, they are the invisible architects of our future. They determine the kind of decisions we make and the effort we are willing to give. A person who constantly tells themselves that they are not capable will never act boldly, no matter how much opportunity surrounds them. Another who feeds their mind with empowering thoughts will act with confidence even when resources are scarce, and those actions will eventually produce results that seem impossible to the one who doubted. Every invention, every achievement, and every step of human advancement began as a thought planted in the fertile soil of the mind before it was acted upon. But seeds alone are not enough. A farmer who only holds seeds in his hand but never plants them will never see a crop. In the same way, someone who fills their mind with ideas but refuses to act will never reap a meaningful harvest. Actions are the expression of thoughts, and without them, even the most powerful ideas remain unrealized. The quality of the harvest depends not only on the type of seeds planted but also on the care, persistence, and patience with which they are nurtured. Consistent action waters the seed, protects it, and gives it room to grow until it eventually bears fruit. The poor mindset plants negative seeds and takes little or no action, then wonders why life feels barren. It excuses itself by blaming the soil, the weather, or fate, rather than recognizing that both the seeds and the tending were within its control. The wealthy mindset, however, chooses its thoughts carefully, planting seeds of responsibility, creativity, and resilience. Then it reinforces those thoughts with disciplined action day after day until the harvest begins to appear. This harvest may not come instantly, but like any good crop, it is guaranteed to arrive when the planting and tending have been done faithfully. Life is generous to those who understand this principle. Whatever you consistently think about and act upon becomes your reality. Your mind is the field, your thoughts are the seeds, and your daily habits are the tending of the soil. Over time, the harvest reflects exactly what was planted and how faithfully it was nurtured, reminding us that abundance is never accidental, but always the natural result of sowing wisely and acting persistently. You cannot outperform the limits you set in your own mind, because the boundaries you believe exist become the walls you never attempt to cross. The human mind is capable of extraordinary achievement, but when it accepts smallness, fear, or doubt as truth, those thoughts act as chains holding back potential. No matter how much talent, opportunity, or ambition someone possesses, if they believe deep down that they are not capable, worthy, or intelligent enough, their actions will always match that belief. The invisible ceiling created in thought becomes stronger than any external obstacle. A person may live in a free world with endless possibilities, yet remain trapped in a prison of their own making, because they have convinced themselves that they cannot go further. What you believe about yourself directs how you behave. If you think success belongs only to others, you will hesitate, procrastinate, and avoid opportunities that might lead you forward. If you convince yourself that you are limited, your energy will align with that belief, and you will unconsciously prove yourself right by failing to try. On the other hand, when you raise the limits in your mind and choose to believe that growth is possible, your actions shift. You begin to attempt things that once felt out of reach, and those attempts lead to learning, progress, and results that expand your world. The limit was never reality, it was only perception. The difference between those who achieve greatly and those who remain average is often not intelligence or luck, but the boundaries they set for themselves. History is full of men and women who started with little, faced rejection, or lacked resources, yet achieved greatness because they refused to believe in limits. They decided in their minds that they were capable, and that decision altered everything. Likewise, countless individuals with gifts and opportunities have remained stagnant because their minds whispered that they could not, and they believed it. Your mind is both the gatekeeper and the liberator of your future. If you set limits based on fear, you will stay within them no matter how hard you work. If you break those limits by believing in possibility, your actions will stretch beyond what you thought possible, and the results will confirm the new belief. Every breakthrough begins when a person refuses to let the mind dictate a smaller life. Limits in the mind are often inherited from the environment, family, society, or past experiences, but they are still choices. You can choose to accept them or to challenge them. The moment you challenge them, you begin to discover strength and capacity you never realized you had. You cannot outperform the limits you set in your own mind, but you can expand those limits until they no longer confine you, proving that the only true barrier between you and abundance is the belief you carry about what is possible for you. The first step to wealth is believing you are capable of it, because no strategy, plan, or opportunity can bear fruit if the mind secretly rejects the idea of prosperity. Wealth begins as an inner conviction long before it becomes an outer reality. A person who believes they are unworthy of abundance will sabotage their progress through hesitation, fear, and self-doubt, even when chances to rise are presented to them. On the other hand, someone who carries the belief that they are capable of creating wealth will find ways to adapt, learn, and act persistently until results appear. Belief sets the direction of action, and without it, even the best opportunities slip away unnoticed or unused. When you believe you are capable of wealth, you begin to think differently. Problems are no longer permanent obstacles, but challenges to be solved. Effort becomes purposeful instead of wasted, and failure transforms into feedback rather than defeat. This belief awakens creativity, resourcefulness, and resilience. The poor mindset often says, "I can't," and with that thought, the journey ends before it even begins. The wealthy mindset says, "I can," and immediately the mind starts searching for ways to make it true. It is not that those with a wealthy mindset have fewer struggles, but that their belief keeps them moving forward while others stop. Belief also determines the habits you are willing to build. If you do not think wealth is possible for you, you will not bother saving, investing, or developing skills that increase your value. Why put in the effort for something you do not believe you can achieve? But once you decide that wealth is possible and within reach, even if far away, you begin to align your daily actions with that vision. You spend more wisely, you learn more diligently, and you work more consistently. Small choices compound into big results because belief fuels persistence. Every great fortune in history began with someone who believed before the evidence appeared. They might have started in poverty, faced rejection, or lacked resources, but they refused to let disbelief dictate their future. That inner certainty became the compass that guided their steps. People without belief, no matter how intelligent or talented, often give up too early or never begin at all. Belief is what bridges the gap between potential and achievement. It is also important to recognize that belief is not arrogance or blind hope. It is a decision to trust in your capacity to learn, grow, and adapt. It does not mean you know everything now, but that you believe you can acquire what is necessary. This mindset unlocks persistence, which is the real driver of wealth creation. The first step to wealth is believing you are capable of it, because once that belief is firmly planted, every action afterward becomes aligned with building, creating, and moving toward prosperity. The journey from poverty to prosperity begins and ends in the mind. Every thought is a seed, every belief a foundation, every habit a brick in the structure of our future. Poverty is not merely a lack of money, but a way of thinking that hides opportunities behind excuses and fear. Wealth, in contrast, is the result of vision, gratitude, discipline, and the courage to create rather than wait. When we replace excuses with responsibility, when we trade desire for discipline, when we see failure as feedback instead of finality, we begin to break the invisible walls that hold so many people back. Success leaves clues, and those who pay attention to them, who study and apply them with persistence, inevitably rise. You cannot outperform the limits you set in your own mind, but you can expand those limits by believing that you are capable of abundance and acting in alignment with that belief. The first step toward wealth is a decision, and once that decision is made, gratitude and discipline carry you forward, ensuring that the harvest reflects the seeds you have planted. Wealth begins in the mind, and when the mind is renewed, prosperity follows as naturally as night follows day.